like to call the meeting December 8th to order. It is 6:30 p.m. We could all please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions to the agenda?
Yes, I have one addition. 8.1 will be a nightlight.
Any other additions to the agenda?
Oh, that's it.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. I need a motion to approve the minutes of November 10th, regular meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor? The consent agenda, tonight we'll do with one. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as recommended by the superintendent. That's 3.1 through 4.3.
Second.
Any discussion on the consent agenda items?
Yeah, just full disclosure, 4.3 deals with a family member of mine, but with no financial gain, so I'll still be voting on it.
And the policy second reads, there were no changes from last time.
Correct.
Just the ones that were suggested.
Right.
All those in favor? That brings us to public participation. If anybody would like to come forward and participate at this time of the meeting, you are more than welcome to do so. I see no comments live. And I see nobody that really feels like they want to come up now, so that's okay. There will be another time later in the meeting, so if you're watching online, please put your comments in at any time. Athletic update? Post?
You're supposed to.
Yeah. So do you have any questions or comments for the posted athletic?
You know, I will ask this question. Maybe it'll be fielded to Chris, I'm not sure. How is Family ID working as related to sports?
Emily really loves it, and so does the nurse. And everybody's sort of in the swing of it now.
Yeah.
It was a little bumpy at first, and now everybody knows how it works.
Okay.
It's really handy for her to just be able to search
Right.
physicals, and so it's working really well.
Great to hear.
Thank you for that update from Emily. We will move to the teacher presentation. How was this evening?
All right.
Dr. Hollenbach, we'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. So I'm here to present on the 20 hours that I was awarded to work on curriculum stuff this summer. And what you're seeing here first is the proposal that I submitted, which basically states that I was going to try and work on two different things. One was on Regents chemistry curriculum, basically to continue to adapt it to the New York State Science Learning Standards. So that was my first goal, and then my second goal was to also do some things with AP Chemistry. I've now taught that here, I think this is my 4th year that I've been teaching it, so still, definitely I'm more comfortable teaching it now, but it still requires a little bit of work. So I want to basically focus on what I've been doing in the Regents Chem, because there's a lot of new stuff going on that I'm very excited about. So this basically shows you the timeline of what's happening with the New York State Science Learning Standards. And I'm zooming in here on chemistry and physics. Those Regents exams, and I believe they may even have the goal of having those be online at that point. So that's June 2026. Obviously, we are the last ones in line with elementary and biology and earth science happening well before that. But nevertheless, June 2026, what is it now, 2022? It's coming up, right? It's coming up quickly. So with that in mind, what you're seeing here is just a snip of those New York State Science Learning Standards. And I don't know if you're a little bit familiar with the format, but it's three-dimensional, so to speak. So they focus on the science and engineering practices, which basically tells students what they have to be able to do. Then you have the disciplinary core ideas, which focuses on content, what students need to know. And then you have cross-cutting concepts, and that focuses on how students think, as it says here in that image. So that's what this is showing. So what I've been doing, so you're seeing here a screenshot of the syllabus that I give to the students in the beginning of the year. And here there is a sentence that's new. I should have probably put that in bold and made it font 30. But the big change of how I'm teaching chemistry now is to follow a storyline. So what is a storyline? And that's what it says here in this brief description. Content is explored through a storyline. So a storyline is a coherent sequence of lessons from the student's perspective, to the extent that it really works from the student's perspective. Obviously, there is some coaxing with the teacher. That is the result of student exposure to multiple phenomena or problems. So I want to share how far I got with that whole storyline idea. And so far, I'm very excited about it. So I want to share more. So the rest that you're seeing here is the chemistry textbook that I've been using, although this year I'm definitely using it much less. And we also purchased last year a chemistry review book. I have not started to use that yet. It's only December, but once we get closer to the regions, I will pull that one back out. The nice thing about this book is we have also purchased the online content, and so it's all available in Google Classroom. But like I said, I haven't addressed this review yet. Okay. So what I started to work on over the summer is coming from iHub. Basically all these lessons that fit into the storyline formula. The first four are the only ones circled because it tells you that I got 20 hours over the summer, right? I'm sure I worked more on it. That's all I was able to do in 20 hours, those 4 lessons. Right now, on Tuesday, my lab cells start on Tuesday, is when I'm going to start lesson 7. So I'm now just barely ahead of where the students are. And I'm only doing these lessons during the 1 lab cell a week. That's just the way it fits the best because of the way the schedule is at Hamilton. I'm seeing different students in class. I'm seeing different students in lab. So the only coherent time I have is during that 1 lab cell a week, and that's when I'm doing this storyline. What I'm doing in class is basically teaching them more through somewhat direct instruction, the rest of the material. Okay, so how did it start? The very first storyline. So this was actually my first lesson slide. Obviously I did not create that GIF, I probably stole it from somewhere, but make students laugh. So the storyline started with, why do things get colder or hotter when they react? So the first lesson that we actually did followed the following clip that you're seeing playing on the left, which is coming from Berkeley, and I actually have copyright permission to show this coincidentally. This is exactly what the students did. They had 2 beakers, there were white powder in them, they're mixing the 2 beakers, the content into one. And then they placed that beaker on top of this wooden block, which came from my husband Ian's workshop. We brought it in, I had all these wooden blocks, and then they squirted some water, I don't know if you can see that, in between the wooden block and the beaker, do a lot of vigorous stirring, and then after a while, it gets so cold, the beaker can just be lifted like that. And that resulted in all these questions. And we are still talking about that one lab that one activity that they did all this time. So I trigger them in this way. What did they wonder? What are their observations? And I placed here an image of Google Keep because there's something else that I worked on in addition to storyline, and that is basically note-taking. How should students nowadays take notes, right? They've got their Chromebooks. They're not as much using paper, at least not in my classes. When COVID started, I kicked all paper out. And so I felt like we needed to use a system that works across all grades and works with the Chromebook. So I've been talking with my son Aiden about it, who's all about personal knowledge management, and so I came with the idea, why don't I use Google Keep? And I don't know if you're familiar with Google Keep. It's something that you maybe use as a shopping list or you got your to-do list, but I'm using it because it's right there on the Chromebook to have students take notes. So I also started to YouTube myself, so there's a whole video here that explains how I use it, all the notes that I've taken in AP Bio, AP Chem, Regents Chem, and BioLab. And so I'll get some of those students as they go from year to year. They will have those notes. I know what notes they have because I took those notes with them. And so it's going to be cool to see that it's going to travel through the school. I will have to talk with Mr. Rogers what happens when they leave, but so far that's been working really, really well. But again, if you want to see more, watch the YouTube. I'm explaining how they do it and how I use it in class. And it's meant not for students. This video is meant for other teachers to learn how to utilize this. Don't play it. There we go. So, and then the last thing that I really want to emphasize is I'm just sharing with you the lessons that I developed over the summer. Again, they were already there, but I can't just take a lesson and present it. I have to first process it myself, see how it works, and then do it with the students. So this was a lesson with the actual wooden block. They're also doing a lesson with simple baking soda and vinegar. We're creating models, and as we learn more about what's happening during these chemical reactions, we're wondering, ooh, what questions come into mind? So we create a driving question board, and then we go into the next lesson. Does it happen during a chemical reaction? Does it also happen during a physical reaction? So then we're doing a second type of lab where we're working with some flames, looking at colors, and drawing conclusions from that. And so I've turned that into a YouTube video. How can you really explore whether a physical change is truly physical change beyond what I ever realized? So that was the third lesson. And then the fourth one that I did, keep going, led to another model. So they're really just trying to understand how this is all working in terms of chemicals reacting, bonds breaking, new bonds forming. And then we play around with all different kinds of tools, like how should we model bonds? Should we use Legos, Velcro, a rubber band, hammer and nail, cement, you name it. And the best way to model a bond, as we all agreed, well, I don't know. What do you think is the best way to model a bond? We've got magnets, we've got Velcro again, we got plain glue. What would be a good way to model a chemical bond? I don't know. What do you think?
I like Legos.
You like Legos a lot?
Sure, it makes
Cool.
sense.
So it might make sense because you can put the two pieces together, right? But there's something about the thing down here. This is kind of a joke GIF animation. But do you know what these two metallic-looking objects really are?
Magnets?
They're magnets. And magnets are great because they can mimic a bond from a distance, right? So you already are attracted here or repelled, and that's the key thing. Bonds between atoms can either be an attraction, or if bonds break, it can be a repulsion. So that led us to adapt our model. And then the last lesson that I want to leave you with is really such a cool thing where request access. Okay. It's such a cool thing because I got to work with Ms. Valancourt and Mr. Alsuk, my earth science and physics colleagues. We pulled our ideas together, and I don't know if it's shown in the next slide. Did a video on that, but in the next slide, request exit 2. It's my video.
It's signed in as me,
Ah,
so
that's
maybe
why.
it's not shared with me.
Okay, so what you're not seeing here is a ram and a magnet taped underneath the ram, a marble that connects to the magnet. And then students are literally rolling down with another marble to try to break bonds. I mean, we had so much fun and also learning, modeling bond making and bond breaking. Things that I didn't even realize as a result of going through this whole storyline idea. And I enjoyed it so much, I made a video out of it that clearly doesn't have permission to be played here. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Let's see. So my first slide, this is also my last slide. That was so much time that took. Regents Chemistry storyline. I never even got to the AP Chem stuff. So whatever I said I was going to do about more on AP Chem, I did not do that. So I just want to underscore, it takes time to develop curriculum. And I'm very appreciative of 20 hours. If I can have more hours next summer, I'd love it, because I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I hope the students are too. So thank you. Questions?
I've got one.
Yeah.
All right. So your project was a summer curriculum project on Regents Chemistry. That's the only part that matters to this question.
Yeah.
Is it a tough challenge to find a balance between teaching the general subject of chemistry and teaching students to be prepared for the questions they might be asked on the Regents exam?
Good question.
That's what I asked.
So it may be because I'm already focusing on the 2026 when the new standards are in place, and that is really focusing on storyline teaching, which is why I attended the Stannis conference twice in the last 2 years and gave also presentations there. So things that they could see in June that may still be on the curriculum in June, I'm not emphasizing as much. So they're losing a little bit out on organic chemistry and maybe some acid-base chemistry, not as much, because it's not as focused in the NISLIS. So in that sense, yeah, my students might not do so well on a few questions, because I think personally this is more important. So maybe my scores might reflect that, but it's not all about test scores, in my opinion.
That answered the question, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Other questions? Thank you for your time and for coming in to present.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Helfand.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tonight's a night of presentation. So next, it's all you, King and King.
Okay.
Well,
I may escape. Not that I don't know, I've got a husband that has dinner ready at home. Sounds really good.
You have to stay.
Told you.
So we have Chad Rogers, who is a partner in the King & King firm, and Paul Johnson, who is a senior project manager, is joining us virtually to give an update. There's Paul. We all know Paul.
There he is.
Paul, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. So this one not be as exciting as the chemistry. I promise you, but we're going to give a brief update on the capital project, which is a really important project for the district and for our firm, for the other team members involved. So a little update on that, and then Paul, which I'll give, and then Paul will talk a little bit about the BCS, the building condition survey process, which is ongoing now and is due early in the next year, in 2023. And then we'll talk a little bit about possible next steps the district can consider beyond that. And then of course we'll take any questions. So jumping back to the current capital project, we're approximately 70% through the project right now, from both a construction standpoint and overall, paying for it, financial outlay that the district is doing. So it's going pretty well.
We're on track on budget. We've, as you probably remember, within the budget for the project, there was some allowances that are there to take care of unforeseen conditions or things that are found during construction or things we may change during construction, or hopefully not, this doesn't happen, but in some cases it does. We're not perfect. Mistakes by the design team. We're just a select shade over 50% through the allowances, and we're about 70% of the project. So we think that's a good kind of test measure of things are going well and we're on track there. You've probably noticed around the school there's some areas that are substantially complete. Those include some of the earlier phases of the project. So some of the classroom work where we did ceilings, flooring, paint, giving a refresh to some of those elementary classrooms. The locker rooms were a complete gut reconfiguration and addition of some other rooms, including the storage and team room as part of that. The gymnasium, nice bright new paint, lighting in the gym, some other upgrades there. The greenhouse had some work outside, the cladding, which was in poor shape, has been replaced with new brick under the greenhouse glass. The front area, front entrance sidewalk has been redone with concrete. And then we're still ongoing through several other areas. So we've got essentially 2 phases that are still wrapping up construction. The next one on the schedule is the fax room, which is a complete gut renovation and expansion of the fax space around the corner here. That should be wrapping up in January, according to our construction manager and contractors. So that'll be great. What's basically left in there is cabinetry, countertops, and appliances installed, and then wrapping it all together. And then the district purchasing furniture, getting that in. So that'll be a great new space. And then the last phase is sort of a combined phase with the LGI, Large Group Construction, and the library/media center. Those are well underway now. Those are expected to wrap up in May with substantial completion, and then contract closeout for the entire project expected by the end of July. From what we've been seeing from our contractors, hearing, we seem to be on track for all those dates, and we'll work through any problems that come up along the way and try to keep them on track for that. Paul's going to touch on the BCS.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Coming to you live from my son's bedroom.
I did wonder the background.
You'll notice random Marvel stuff and everything else on the walls behind me here. This is not my office. The internet was all twitchy in my office, so I went back to my house and hunkered down in Nathaniel's room while he's at basketball practice. So hope you're all doing well. We are currently working on the building condition survey, which, if you remember from previous discussions or the process that we went through 5 years ago, it is a every 5-year requirement of New York State Education Department. There's a set form, a document that itemizes pretty much every component of the building, everything from the ceilings to the various types of flooring, the condition of the walls, the structure, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. It literally touches on every aspect of the building, and it's a rating system, and it's a way for the state to get a reasonable understanding of the current condition of your existing building. And so it's a rating system. In the end, there's an overall rating, and so we go through that, where we're in the process of going through that right now. The way we do that is we literally, architects, engineers, landscape architects, etc., all walk your building and analyze all those components. If anything is reaching the end of its useful life, which is defined by New York State as anything within 5 years or less of what we deem its useful life to be, that item gets a cost assigned to it. These costs are New York State then has us add factors in, so that it's really giving them and anyone else that uses the document really the cost that it would be in about 5 years. Because if you think of any project, by the time you go through the whole planning process and all, by the time it's built, it easily is within sort of a 3 to 5 year window. So again, we're in that process. The deadline to submit that document is the end of February. We are on course to be done prior to then. We will, before submitting to New York State Education Department, we will meet with the district one final time and go through the results with the administration, make sure we're all in agreement, we understand what it says, and then it can be submitted to the state. Really, next steps from there would be to take that document, which again gives a good overview of your existing building, but it's not really a great planning document from a larger holistic view of the district and the district's needs. And so then what we like to do from there is to immediately go into what's called a long-range planning process and create a long-range plan for the district. Again, another requirement by New York State for the district to have a long-range plan and to update it. They actually want you to update the executive summary on a yearly basis. But it makes a lot of sense to do this with the BCS directly after it. It makes a lot of sense to do it in this linear process. In the long-range plan, we can then talk about things like safety and security, educational programming, how is the building meeting or not meeting your current and future needs and programs within the district, and any other topics that the district deems ought to be thought about as it comes, as it relates to your physical resources, whether it be the bus garage and how is the bus garage working or more likely not working these days, particularly how it's randomly situated in the middle of your parking lot. The fact that it is a very outdated building and it needs a significant amount of work for it to be updated. So again, I don't want to dive into the weeds on any particular item, but more talk about the process and next steps. So once you have a long-range plan and the BCS in place, the next logical step is to go directly into a pre-referendum process, which is where you really take that long laundry list of items that may be indicated on the long-range plan and working with your fiscal advisors and any other team members, such as really fiscal advisors would be the key one, I guess, between our team and fiscal advisors. We'd really start to talk about what the next project would look like and financially what makes sense for the district, and really aligning all those pieces and moving towards what would be your next capital project. Again, your goal is to do projects roughly in a 5-year cycle. That way you're maximizing your building aid from New York State and addressing things in a more timely fashion and a more bite-sized sized projects versus waiting longer and then really getting behind the 8 ball. If you remember, the district probably for a long time did projects more in a 10-year cycle. Since then, the State Education Department has really tightened their rule on the maximum cost allowance and the 5-year window. And so that's where it's really, it's driven all districts to really rethink that strategy. And I think if you talk to any of your counterparts in other districts, everyone is moving in more of this 5-year cycle these days. So with that said, you know, the goal, as I talked about maximum cost allowances and fiscal responsibility, the goal again is to avoid significant tax impacts or having to live with things that are not working or efficiently within the district. And so with some good planning through this process, we continue to assist the district in those endeavors. So with that, I'll stop talking and maybe see if there's any questions.
I've got a ton. But you guys go ahead. like to jump in?
I don't actually have any, so I think
All right.
you can go.
You're up. I have
All right.
no doubt what you say will cover it.
All right. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming here. I really appreciate it. I think we will work in reverse. Let's start with the BCS survey, or BCS. Paul, you touched on, I didn't quite get it, a long-range planning process, you know, once you get it. Is that part of the required BCS process?
No, it's actually a separate mandate from New York State that's required of all school districts. It's a separate item. It's actually, I think the long-range plan predates the BCS. You know, the BCS has been around for about 15 years, but I think the SED has asked districts to produce long-range plans for longer than that.
Okay. And now, you know, Mr. Crum's not here to help answer these questions, so Bill might, but in terms of financial, so we're paying you guys to do the BCS, and then obviously the long-range planning in addition to that, or is it all part of like the same?
Yeah, so the building condition survey is reimbursed by New York State at your building aids, but yes, you are paying us, and New York State, you know, realizes there's an expense tied to that, and so you get reimbursed for that. We often, as far as long-range planning and pre-rec processes, we're really flexible, and we work with districts to figure out how to help them get to the point of a project. And so oftentimes we'll go ahead at no fee or a reduced fee, or we try to be really flexible with districts until they can get a project passed, at which time we know that they can get bonding and et cetera. And then obviously our fee would be part of a larger project. But so as we go forward, we try to be really flexible with how we work with districts. You know, first and foremost, our highest priority is the the long-term relationship with the district. So we're not particularly about any individual project. We're much more relational, and so we want to do what's right by all of you.
Right. Now, when school districts plan out future construction projects, what has your experience been with facility committees? At what point does the architectural firm that a district chooses to hire, how does that correlate with a facilities committee, in your experience?
I guess I don't quite follow your question. Do you mind just restating that one more time?
Yeah, I guess my question is you know, we're exploring the possibility of establishing a facilities committee, and I guess my question is, what is your experience with facilities committees with other school districts that you've worked with?
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, so pretty typical that particularly larger districts absolutely have facility committees, and they're a subset of the board. And we typically meet with them. Sometimes it's quarterly to give updates. I think where we see it most successful is the quantity of times or how often we meet with districts is really driven by what's happening at that point. We've seen some smaller districts, more similar to your size, that don't necessarily have that committee, but then we present to the board at appropriate times. And so that way, again, after we've worked with the administration to, you know, particularly in the pre-rep process or even in the long-range plan, there's probably some steps along there where it makes sense that we come back to you and report out where we're at, whether you're a facility committee or the full board.
That's helpful, thank you. So that
Sure.
That covers the BCS. Does anyone have any questions on the BCS? All right. So phase 3 construction that we're in. Overall, what are your thoughts on how this phase has gone? Just in general and comparative to phase 1 and 2. Big picture.
Take that one, Paul?
Yeah, sure. I mean, no construction project is without bumps, and so it's all about managing expectations. So I would say that the project at Hamilton and the team of contractors we have are better than your average, honestly. I think we have a very good team at Hamilton. There's some personalities in there that make it interesting, and our meetings are always entertaining. But, you know, at the end of the day, their goal, and we really appreciate it, that their goal is to provide a quality project and to provide, good construction, high quality construction. And so that's great to have, and that's a leg up on some other low bidders that we work with out in the region. So I would say in comparison to the other phases, we're on par. I think the project is going generally as we would expect. There's a few items where things have not gone well, not necessarily due to the local contractors, not really their fault. They've owned up to what happened. They're working with their suppliers, et cetera, and we're getting things fixed where need be. So, normal amount of punch list items. We feel like that overall, the site foremans all work together well and are communicating well. So I think it's overall it's going well.
And I think one thing to add to that is it's been a roller coaster ride with supply chain on every construction project for the last couple of years coming out of the pandemic. And we struggled with a few of those things early on in this project, but a real, I think, concerted effort by the construction management team and the administration and through our construction meetings to try to pin down that everything has been ordered. What's the issue? What's the lead time? What's the delivery date? And delivery dates seem to be somewhat constantly changing, so that's a little bit of a evolving, but as we get closer to the project now, we're really locking in where most of everything is either on site or is in a warehouse somewhere and available. So I think, knock on wood, we've gotten past most of those challenges for the phase 3.
Yeah, and I think the items that the key areas that are still open construction items are all intended to be completed, minus the fact room. That's going to be done sooner, but the other areas are really being completed at the tail end of the school year, and so we're naturally not going to find ourselves in a position similar to the locker rooms where if something doesn't show up, where it's holding up or impeding the district's ability to use that space. I mean, those spaces are pretty much not intended to be used. I'm talking primarily the library and the LGI. I mean, they're really not realistically going to see student use until the next school year. So, but we have a really good buffer on this project of the entire summer to finish up any loose ends, or if something does go beyond the substantial completion date, we've got a nice window. The goal was to not have construction this next summer, so we intend to all be out of your hair and not bother everyone for another summer.
That answered that question, thank you. Just because I'm always trying to learn how the process works, what is King & King's role? What is an architect's role in a construction project once the bids have been approved and construction has begun? So what is the role of King & King once that happens?
Yeah, so our goal, our role and responsibility is to oversee construction and essentially to make sure what's being built is in line with the owner's expectations and with our own expectations of how we've detailed it, drawn it, to make sure that systems are working properly, and aesthetically that the project is meeting what we expect, what we drew and feel like we did. So our role is really to be an impartial, fair party that works between the owner and their contractor, because the contractors don't work for us. We're an impartial third party.
Yeah.
That tries to help everyone work through any issues that come up, and then ultimately hold hold everyone accountable to what they bid and documents.
Okay. I just got two more. Have any deadlines been missed in phase 3? And if so, should I know anything about it, or like any? Like how did the deadline process work? Like if we have these subcontractors, obviously in some kind of a written agreement, I would imagine a deadline is drawn up, correct? So
Yep.
phase
So
3,
there's a-
how is that played out?
Yeah, so there's a written schedule that literally documents what everyone should be working on every week of the project. And so the primary responsibility to oversee that is the construction manager or the owner's representative, who's construction associates on this project.
Mm-hmm.
And so so we have meetings every other week, and then construction associates actually meets with contractors on a weekly basis, and is really watching that schedule very closely. They bring it up in every meeting, and obviously Chad and I talk about it too. We just pipe in wherever it makes sense. But we try to make sure that at every meeting we're talking about what long lead items are out there, what should we be thinking about, what are the dates they're being told at that time, and often this is a moving target. And so it's really just, it's our goal first and foremost to keep everyone talking, to make sure that the information we're getting is the most accurate that everyone has at that time. Understanding that, we have factories that, we went through this on the first phase. We have a factory that told us that tile was ready, and someone sent a truck to Tennessee to pick it up, and it wasn't ready. So, weird things like that are still happening. More so than we like to see, but at times it's out of our control,
Yeah,
unfortunately. But we try to make the best of it, and first and foremost, make sure everyone's being upfront and clear about what's happening. So when
have
something
deadlines been
does get
missed?
out of whack, Travis, right? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Travis, thanks.
Yeah. When something does get out of whack, the contractor is responsible
Okay.
by contract, to come up with a makeup plan. And so that may mean that they're working weekends or bringing on extra staff or whatever that means for them to get caught back up. And it's their responsibility to do that at no cost to the owner. And so those are some of the strategies that are built into the contract to help, particularly construction associates, manage contractors and keep everyone as close to the target as they can. Now, to be fair to them, there are things that happen, and this happened in the locker. There are things that none of us could have known about. There are discovered conditions that do at times impact the schedule, and contractors do require additional time, and we try to be fair about that. If they need an extra 2 weeks to deal with a subfloor issue, then we ought to give it to them first and foremost to make sure that we're getting the highest quality construction out of that, and not forcing them to rush and do something that's not really best practices for construction.
Yeah, I get it. I could come up with questions for hours, but everyone's time is valuable. But I guess my hope is that moving forward, the communication and just the smoothness of the project can continue on, and the product shortages, the labor shortages, I'm in that. I know how it is, but at some point we just have to learn how to deal with the world that we're in now. And otherwise it's just the boy who cried wolf. So I'm really hopeful to see this phase continue on, and then we can have the conversation, next steps from here. But I do thank you both so much for your time on this project and your time this evening, and thank you for answering my questions.
Happy to come back anytime.
Our pleasure. Take care. Nice to
Thanks,
see you all.
Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
Absolutely.
Thank
See ya.
And we will also let you, we'll also let you speak out of your bike.
Okay. I probably will take you up on that. I go there and drive,
Right?
and it was starting to sleep when I was driving. Thanks a lot.
See you next week.
Thank you for
Okay,
being here.
thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Brings us to 6.1. And a motion to approve the leave of absence for child-rearing purposes for Victoria Smith with tentative basis February 27th to May 15th, recommended by the superintendent. Second. Discussion would be an executive session. All those in favor? Need a motion to approve the leave of absence for child-rearing purposes for Christopher Potter. Tentative dates of January 3rd through June 30th is recommended by the superintendent. Discussion would be an executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve Sharon Follett as a long-term substitute effective January 3rd to June 30th is recommended by the elementary principal and superintendent.
Second.
Discussion would be an executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion to approve Samantha Gerstein and Julie Karowski as substitutes as recommended by the secondary principal and superintendent.
Just for clarification, those are our two student teachers from Colgate.
Yes.
All those in favor? Aye. Need a motion to approve the recommendation of committees on special education and preschool special education. Discussion will be an executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll turn it over to Bill for an SRO discussion.
Yeah, I was contacted by the sheriff of Madison County last week that their attorneys within Madison County have rejected our draft edits of the contract. And they are unwilling to change any duties in the contract for the SRO moving forward. And the rationale is that this is a contract, the original contract that was proposed to us, is a contract that is used throughout the county by all the districts that have agreed to come into the partnership to have an SRO through the county. And they do not want to set precedent and change the duties of the SRO or the job description of the SRO. The draft that we provided took into account all the comments and suggestions from our community and from the board that I worked with our school attorney to submit to their attorneys. And that is the message back, that they're not willing to make those changes. And if we want to partner with them, the contract would have to be the original contract that was proposed from the company. So I wanted to have a discussion with you on how you'd like me to proceed with it.
We are able to take in account some of the discussion items once they become, once we sign it, if we were to sign a contract and they work here, we can do some things with that.
Yeah, so some of the suggestions and concerns were the training of the SRO and some of the job responsibilities within the district. What would they be involved in, not involved in? We have every right to provide training, in-house training, to the SRO, very similar to what we do with our faculty and staff. So it would be the same onboarding procedure as if we hired a new teacher or staff member. So restorative practices, any type of DEI work, we can involve and require the SRO to be involved in that type of training in-house. We just cannot change their job duties or responsibilities that are stated in the original contract that the county provided to us. I had a conversation with my colleagues throughout the county who have SROs through the county, and they have not made changes to the contract, and they have provided training in-house to the SROs that they have. And there has been no complaints from any of my superintendent colleagues with the job performance of the SROs within the district. And I think it's important to know and to publicly say, if we do adopt the original contract, the district does retain the right to terminate upon 30 days if we are unhappy for any reason. Some small changes that are allowable would be sick days, extra duty compensation, we required the SRO to be at athletic events or any type of extracurricular, we could change and put in that wording in the contract that we're going to pay them X amount of money per hour to be here, or we could pay them for sick days, those type of changes. But we can't change the job duty or responsibilities.
What about changes to the responsibilities of the district?
Responsibilities of the district? I would have to clarify that with the sheriff.
A very lengthy thing about our responsibility on moving the right contract.
The original proposed from the county?
So the last one, that reporting of crimes, a lengthy thing about how we have to report every single infraction to the.
Yep. So that would not change. The district reserves the right. So I think we need to be real clear that the SRO would not be involved in any disciplinary actions within this building. So let's take, for instance, students caught vaping in the locker room. The SRO is called. The SRO would bring that student and the vape, if it was confiscated, to the building principal. That's it. They would then be removed. It would be the duty of the principal to carry out the disciplinary consequences. If there was a weapon, illegal drugs, the SRO would bring that to the principal. The principal would then call the outside agency, and the internal SRO would wipe their hands clean. They would not be involved in any of that.
Right, but here it says, if the district personnel uncover evidence that a crime may have been committed, defined in the statutes, district policy or regulations, or is determined by the school principal or designee, a school official shall notify the SPOs. So, my question is why shouldn't that be at the district's discretion?
It would be at the district's discretion.
So this is the section, I think.
There's a whole second part of that that doesn't belong in district responsibilities. It says, once notified of occurrence of the crime, the SPO will complete blah, 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 blah. That's not the responsibility. It doesn't even belong in that section.
So
But again, that's
this whole
nitpicking.
section, I like it. That's one that I think, if we can change that, do that. The other, for me, a big thing can be, if anybody else wants to speak.
No, keep going.
Well, I'm trying to find this spot.
So again, duty of the SPO, it says D, in coordination with the principal or designee, investigate all crimes and incidents occurring and in the vicinity of school grounds and provide appropriate documentation for such investigations. I thought that's exactly what they weren't supposed to be doing. Right? Like, I thought they weren't going to do investigations, that it's exactly what you're saying, that they would report, they would hand over, and then if an investigation needed to be done, somebody else would be called in, so they remained the safe.
Yep.
But
Again, under the responsibility of the district in their contract, provide the SPOs with full access to school facilities, personnel, and students. That's a very broad. Access to students. What does that mean? That can mean a lot of things. I think that's, again, if we can change the responsibility of the district, I think we should take some ownership there.
And I guess my other struggle with this whole thing is that New York state law says that a school district that employs or contracts with or otherwise retains personnel, including SROs, shall establish a written contract or memorandum of understanding developed with stakeholder input, including but not limited to parents, students, school administrators. I mean, the list goes on of who's to be included. Such written contract shall define the relationship between a school district or charter school, school personnel, students, visitors, law enforcement, and or private security. Shall be consistent with the code of conduct, define personnel's roles, responsibilities. I guess my question is, if we are required by New York state law to write a contract that meets our stakeholder input, but the organization that we are contracting with is saying, this is our contract, take it or leave it, I feel like we're in a really bad spot. I don't know where that leaves us, right? Where does that leave us? Do you understand where I am?
Yeah,
Do you
no, I
understand what I'm
understand.
saying
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
Can I get clarification for a second? So the SRO contract that is attached in board docs, is that the contract that we're talking about, or are we going back to like an original contract?
The original contract proposed by the county.
But it can't.
So
Am
the
I
one that's
working on the right
attached is not
That was
what I'm looking at?
What is the attached contract?
Where is it?
They're not the same.
No, I'm
But
not
this is
logged
what I
I
in.
was
thought.
gonna say, because I'm not following.
I went back in my emails and
That's
pulled
right.
this out of the original
Okay.
Madison County. We had, the very original contract we were given was from our lawyers. And then we were given one from Madison County. And then we drafted one a little bit based on the Syracuse one and all of that stakeholder input, right?
Mm-hmm.
The very, very, very first contract we were given was actually from our lawyers. It wasn't from the county. Way back when.
The county provided a
I think the one. that-
Not until after we had
I
one
think
from
you're
our
talking
lawyers.
one that was given as like a reference of what one would look at.
yeah.
I'm not logged in.
Yeah, see, because all the stuff that you guys just read is not the one that I'm reading.
Yeah, which is the one on board doc? Is that the right one? Or is that,
But is it from Madison County or is it from our lawyer?
It's from the
Madison County.
Yeah, see, and this one doesn't have anything in it that you guys are reading.
This is the one
So
we're
then
going
where
back
did this
to.
come from?
Well, you guys changed it, Ellen, you changed it.
But this is from Madison County. This isn't our, I mean, I went back in the emails and pulled this from Madison County.
I can
this is
go.
what Bill sent in the email.
Wow.
He sent us our contract, the one we worked on,
Bill,
the Syracuse City one, and then the one from Madison County.
that's the very first one we got.
Yeah, see, and that's what's attached, and it doesn't have any of this stuff.
Yeah, this is the
I mean, this is the one we wrote, which is pages and pages longer than,
Yeah.
so, I mean, they are so different that it's not even.
No, this is
The one we
13
wrote.
pages long. The one that I'm looking at is 13 pages.
The one from the email, this is what we asked.
No.
Yeah, this is the-
That was the original one. Yeah, because it, between the Madison County, and I was like, what?
It's between.
Yeah, this is the
from
original one.
Sheriff's office.
From the sheriff's office.
Yep.
Mhm.
How many whereases are there?
Starts with general terms.
There's
and
three.
conditions.
Three.
Okay, this has 3 whereases. So where, so
But
what are
under-
you and I looking at then?
This is one that Bill sent with our draft and something from Madison County. But the one on board docs is
You gotta go
the
back
issue.
to the very first one that's
Yeah.
attached
Right,
to
and
the
that's one on
docs.
board docs.
The one on board docs is the very first one.
Okay, then I have to start over because I went back through
Yeah, I was
emails
gonna say, when you were
and-
just reading, I'm looking, and I'm like, I am not seeing any of this as duties of the district. There's only like, there's not
The
many
district's
things,
duties, there's A for F,
right,
and then short.
right. And it's basically about like training and us training the staff,
Mhm.
giving them an office
Mhm.
and access to general office equipment, like
I
copy
wonder if this
machines.
was the one from the lawyers.
And then saying that the SRO may be required to attend additional, that's all it has for.
Okay, so school district duties, confirm this, rules receivable training, train
That's the one
staff
board docs,
annually.
right?
Yes, that's what I'm
Yes.
reading. Review data collected by the agency at least once a year pertaining to, I haven't had a chance to read my email today. Did you answer it? Did we ever get data? Did we ever
Oh,
get
yeah, I
data?
answered that, yeah, no, we did.
Okay,
No. Yeah, I answered that.
just checking.
So,
To the extent permitted by law.
before I get into my questions, Michelle, what are your thoughts on where we're at right now and steps moving forward?
I would say.
Where is
I think if there are ways that we can still incorporate the things we find very important, that the community finds very important, that with the clause being terminate, that it's still something that I personally am willing to consider. The clause is what helps me be willing to consider.
The 30-day clause.
Because if for any reason we don't think the relationship with either the person or the contract is something that's working for our district, we have the ability to.
So here are my general thoughts. And it's kind of a question of interpretation. In September, we passed a motion to, I'm just going to read it verbatim so we can kind of dive into it. The motion that we passed was to enter into an agreement with Madison County Sheriff Office for school resource officer services during the 2022-2023 school year as recommended by the superintendent. So, and obviously this contract wasn't attached to it. So, the school year is winding down, so time obviously is of the essence. How do we interpret that motion? Like, what did we approve?
We approved Bill looking into the contract to bring us a contract to sign.
You still would have to approve a contract.
We didn't approve an actual contract, we approved.
I guess my question is, should we have? Not should we have, but should that original motion have been tied with a contract? Because right now, this motion doesn't make any sense to me. When we're stuck
I
here.
think it was very intentionally not tied to a contract because we didn't have a contract we were ready to agree to yet. It was to move forward with the process. And
Which
part
is-
of that process was
which
to
is the
draft a
time.
contract
Yeah, yeah.
based on
If we-
community
If we
input.
hadn't done this, then we wouldn't be still
follow.
talking about it. So, yes, there is a purpose and there was a purpose, and, that's, we would have to rescind that if we were to go forward. Let's say if we are to go forward, we have to rescind that and make a motion to use the original contract as written. As written. That would be,
Wait, repeat that for me?
we would rescind the motion, and there's a motion out there,
Yeah.
and then.
Well, it's not a it's been passed, yeah.
Yeah. And then we would have a motion to enter into this contract.
As originally proposed by the county.
Right.
I think we have to be specific with that word.
So, how is this, the county is still actively searching for the right fit for us. Do we have any update on that?
My conversation with the sheriff, I asked him that. If the board was to approve the original contract, where are we? Should we wait until this fall? This year is kind of dwindling. And he said they will be ready to go and have some.
Remind me again if, never mind, this quick. I was going to have a question about summer school and how that would play in, but that would be in the school year. So, I'm glad that we took the time to explore these concerns. And though I'm a little upset that the county couldn't work with us a little bit more, I understand their reasons. So I guess what I would like, and I want to know how you guys feel too, is because time is of the essence, could we have the best contract we can work out with the county available for us to vote on either next month or the month after? Is that reasonable to ask?
I think that's reasonable. I think I need more time than tonight, particularly since I
Yeah,
was
well,
apparently reading the
I'm
wrong
not talking about
contract.
tonight, but I'm talking
Right.
about like we,
Well, and and again, I appreciate the comment that we can then require other training here,
Right.
right? So I think that actually helps me a lot to wrap my head around this, because I think a lot of the concerns that were being raised, that we talked, not a lot, well, not all of them, but a lot of them, many of the concerns that we were raised and talked about, we may be able to address by what we require here. So as long as we have the ability to require those things, that actually helps me to feel better, but I need to wrap my head around that. I still struggle with a law that says we have to have input and an agency that's not willing to bind to bend its contract, right? Like, that's a problem for me, but that's a whole different problem, and we may be able to meet our needs in other ways, and so I'm open. And I want you to hear that I'm working on that. But I think next month is reasonable. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that gives us time to chew through this.
You know, Bill, with the county, you know, they've given us this, once we dial down what exactly contract we're talking about. But it sounded like they might be flexible in some areas.
Some areas.
Now, if that is the case and we say, hey, what can you do? Do we have to wait a couple months for it to go back through their like committee that they have?
It's quite possible. See, it has to be,
So
their attorneys have to approve it. And then the Justice Commission has to then put their stamp of approval on it. Then it comes to us.
So what did they say they were flexible about? Because I didn't hear a whole lot of flexibility.
Small changes within, like if we wanted the SRO to be at athletic contests, extracurricular, what that compensation would look like.
Okay.
If we're gonna pay them for sick days, but nothing to do with the job responsibilities or duties of the SRO.
So I have a couple comments on here. So several times in this contract, it does say, like, when requested to do so by school district officials. Like, it says that almost every single bullet. The other thing is, I have a little bit of defense for the county because this is a position that they are subsidizing, that they want flexibility between school district to school district. So if you have all these different contracts floating around, if somebody doesn't fit us, well, maybe they are a good fit for another district. So it's like, oh, but wait a minute, we have to go back because the contract is completely different than it was at this district you just came to, which could hinder that process. And again, I think I've been pretty open on my feelings from the beginning, so I don't need to get into any of that, but I think that this original contract is vague in a lot of areas for a reason, so that we do have the flexibility to request if we want them involved, to require training. Yeah, it's not spelled out A through Z. However, this gives us the flexibility internally
So
I don't
to format.
I don't see in this contract where we could require training. Could.
I didn't agree.
It says that we confirm that it's been done as required under the terms of this agreement.
It says right here, train the SRO regarding their role in the school
But
district.
that's the agency. That's the sheriff's office. We just ensure that.
No,
they
right here,
by
confirm that the SRO has received all training required.
under the terms of this agreement.
Well, I can tell you that my conversation with a superintendent within Madison County that employs, I think, 4 or 5 SROs, they send their SROs to the New York State Mentoring Program, which is a program through New York State that works with anybody who's working with youth on how to mentor kids. They send them to that program. So you do have flexibility.
I just think, if we can't change the duties of the SRO, I am more concerned about when we're saying, what are our responsibilities as a school district, and we're turning it over, we're acknowledging that in a contract. I'd like to see that we have some input there. If they're now telling us what are our responsibilities, and we just have to accept what they want in the contract, I think that goes back to Ellen's point, like, where are we having input? It's not on how the SRO performs, and it's not on what we have to do. Where do we have any say?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what I'm afraid of in a relationship of this kind, is that we cede our authority to someone, to an outside agency that we then don't have control over. Because there's always likelihood that any bad thing that happens could happen from one of our employees. One of our employees in the district, any of us who work with kids here could be susceptible to something wrong. But we also have the authority to correct those mistakes. So that's where I'm concerned that if we don't have control over what our own responsibility is, that to me is a problem.
Well, I guess the other option here too is to not get subsidy through the county, and if we want to have this, a different contract than what they're going to subsidize, you know, maybe, say I'm in agreement or not, but maybe that's the path we need to take with figuring out how to budget fully for this position if it's something we choose to do. That's probably going to be more than $40,000 a year, or $20,000, which is what we'd have to pay now. But I think that if we want to continue exploring this avenue with Madison County, this is their program. And I think we either need to, like, yes, we want to be a part of this program, or no, we don't. And if we don't, is there something else that we as a board, another avenue we want to take and fully fund it within the district?
I think that's a way to bring up at least an alternative.
So here's my question, it's partly hypothetical. In a meeting or two, we're presented with a contract to vote. Now, for the sake of argument, say that passes by the vote. So we have once we get somebody, we're set for the rest of the year. In that time between whenever that is and the end of the school year, could the district work with the county to better improve the contract for future years?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
They don't want different contracts. They want one contract that every
They
school
want a
is
standard
using.
contract to be used by every district throughout the county. And I, Corey, to your question, I asked the sheriff, you know, if we have training that we want our SRO to go to and support, would he then support that? He said, absolutely. I'm all for enhancing our SROs within the district when dealing with kids.
And I am sure that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
My concerns are when things are not in writing, and then it's a different sheriff, or a different SRO, or a different superintendent, 5 years, or whatever, right? Who knows? And then that's when things, and a different board. And we're there dealing with rules that are, you know, we're making a decision that's going to last a lot longer than any of us.
Well, these are going to be year-to-year appointments.
Yeah. But the contract, if the contract doesn't change.
Well, the contract is every year, right?
The contract would
So
But if
they
we
could
never have
come
any
back
input
with
in
a
the contract.
revised contract.
But if we don't have input.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
we're in the same situation.
So I think it would be interesting if you could go back and specifically ask, what changes can we make under the district responsibilities? What will they allow before we spend time doing revisions with a lawyer and all of that? What will they allow in that section? And is there anything that they will allow us to add about training? Because if we could do those two things, from what I'm hearing at the moment, I feel like that puts us in a little better spot. Although it doesn't solve all of our problems.
My areas of concern would be that we do have control over mandating some training. That the district can't retain, is clearly that the district retains control over discipline. And maybe that's cleared up by me being told that I'm reading this wrong or missed something. And that investigations are not the duty of the SRO, which I do believe this does say under number 5 in there. And maybe that's also the lawyer can, maybe it's lawyers that can clarify, because it says under the supervision of the county, Madison, in the county of Madison County Sheriff's Office, sheriff, or his or her designee, and in coordination with the school district administration, investigate all crimes, citizens, and curriculum, or the receiving school records. So maybe that is more under our purview than I understand. But that could be cleared up either through our lawyers affirming that, or.
So
in
there,
the duties of the district, if that's clear.
there is a line under school district duties that says train staff annually regarding appropriate role of SRO in schools and appropriate conditions under which SRO assistance may be requested. It doesn't say it exactly the way we are, but it is our responsibility, it says, to train, like, our staff about the role.
It's training our staff, it's not training SRO.
Sorry, yeah.
I think asking them to figure that piece out for us before we go to a lawyer report, right? So that if we can figure out the school district responsibility area, and like Corey just said, those three parts are the most important to get clear understanding.
So just to clarify, what can we change in the responsibility of the district? Can we mandate training? Does the district have total control of discipline? And investigations are not the duty of the SRO. I'll give clarification on those three topics.
I'll just add this, and this is not a sticking point for me, but maybe something you can clarify. In our draft, we laid out a little bit more clearly our process in the selection. I don't see that here, but there was one draft where I seemed a little less on our side. And I'm trying to think if it says that here. That's just for you to think about it. That needs to be confirmed. But maybe you're okay with that anyway.
Yep.
The other potential avenue here could be, and maybe this is just something our lawyers can clarify, does this contract give us enough flexibility that establishing certain board policy would have the same force that we need to mandate training, to confirm control over discipline? Could our policy do that? Or would this, if there was some potential, they didn't completely say the same thing, what takes precedent? If that makes sense.
It would be nice to this is not policy.
The question I have, as I'm hearing this conversation, and I can't remember if it's been answered in this whole process, is say we move forward, we have an SRO, the 30-day window has passed, something comes up where the district or the board is not happy.
No, it's a 30-day notice.
30 months, we can
So
do it anytime.
anytime throughout the year.
I did want to clarify with you. My reading of that is 30-day notice, meaning it's 30 days for the financial obligation of the contract. But if we needed the SRO out, if we decided this SRO can't be
Gotta
there,
go.
it gotta go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just have to perform.
But the contract, that's
Contract.
just
But
the
it could be
financial.
in day 1 through 30, or it could be 120 through 150. Like it could be,
Terminated.
it can be any time. Which is the part that I like the best, Travis, is because it is any time.
So am I hearing that I'm not suggesting that this would come up, but just to kind of get a full understanding, if the district and the board grew upset in the middle of the year with how things were going, you could just tie your hand, wash your hands of it. You probably still have a financial obligation, but you could.
We have a 30-day financial obligation.
Yep.
But once the contract doesn't give the county authority to keep an officer in here all year. They don't have that authority. So where that ends with, if they can clarify that, I would love to have a contract for the board to vote on in 1 or 2 meetings. I think that's fair. That's what I would hope for, and that's between you guys to figure out. But that is where my hope is to be.
Yeah, because that would put us in January, February.
Yeah, I mean, time is of the
3
essence.
months. So,
Well, I appreciate the conversation. It's important that we wait so we can have these questions answered. It's important that we wait so that we're all reading the proper contract.
I mean, can we triple check that we have the right contract?
Yeah.
Because I'm a little
To the August one.
bothered
That one is the
by-
very first one that we received.
So
but
we'll,
we'll share that with them.
yeah, let's not look through emails,
Yeah.
we'll get the one,
It'll come
we'll
from us.
just get a new one
Yep.
Yeah.
from them.
Yep.
And Jody will make sure we get that
Yep.
from there. So thank you guys for that discussion. Anything, I'm not trying to rush it, but anything there? You good at the moment?
I think
Perfect.
so.
That brings us to the administrator's report. So is there anything specific that anybody has that they would like to question? All the questions should go to Matt, and he should have to answer them immediately because he's not here. Yeah. And just for those online, community participation will be up shortly, so if you have anything, please add to the comment box. Yeah.
Mark, how'd the job fair go?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good.
Do you have like a broad array of all different companies?
Yep, 43. That sounds about right.
We actually have a participant here, so, and we're getting a nod. You
Yeah.
you enjoyed it?
I did enjoy it, yeah.
What was, like, if you could say, like, the best thing of the whole thing was,
I'd say NICEAG did a pretty good job.
yeah?
They had a pretty good booth, a lot of people enjoyed them, yeah.
Did you like the range of types of employment opportunities?
Yeah, for sure. They definitely got a good range, and you got to walk through it. Everybody was pretty nice to talk to.
Great. Figured we might as well
Yeah.
ask, right? Like, he's got to be here anyways, we might as well have him participate.
Extra credit.
Right?
Yeah.
Mark that down. Other questions for the administrator?
I got one for Chris and then kind of a comment. I just got to see the new CNC, so I see that's in your report. That's kind of exciting.
I'm really excited about it. Really trying to beef up our offerings and opportunities for kids. I had a conversation at the job fair with a company that, an industrial CNC shop. And we got to talking about the new machine, and they're really looking for people who understand how to use this equipment.
It's a program.
Yeah, and so our machine is small, but it uses the same software, the same sorts of tools and procedures that these giant machines use. So if we can teach our kids to use these, they'll be able to take.
I always look at CNC machines as the crossroads between different types of mindsets. You get like the hands-on people, like the nuts and bolts, and then you get the people that are all in the computer and the coding, and that's kind of where the two come together and
exactly
the magic happens. So I'm very excited to see that. You had a technology night in elementary. How'd that go?
I think it was great.
Is that the first time we've done that?
I think so, yeah. We had a couple of different things. I had a presentation in the auditorium with the grown-ups for a while. We talked about online safety and screen time. We had a nice conversation about that. I presented some tips and tools that I use to help them. And then the kids, meanwhile, were going around to different stations, technology stuff we've got going on. And then I let the parents go, and they went to see all the technology stuff. We had drones and green screens. It was a really nice night.
So my last question is, Heather, it's on your report, but I guess Mark, it would touch on you too. Reviewing the grades 3 through 8 ELA and math scores. How are they looking? I guess the question is, are we seeing the effects of the last couple of years in the schools?
I wish I had them in front of me. But
Everybody's
Just
seeing
general,
it.
I don't need data, just generally
Yeah.
speaking, like. what are
Generally
your
speaking,
thoughts?
everybody has seen the effects on scores. I mean, we were online, so if we weren't able to get through fractions, and they're taking the test that has fractions in there, then, across the board, you're going to see that effect. I think that if you're looking at our data overall, we weathered the storm pretty well, comparatively.
yeah, I mean, our scores were above or a little or at or above the New York State.
You guys did very good.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
so I mean, I think that says a lot, kind of in comparison. So I was a little nervous in the beginning, but then as I looked at the big picture across New York State, I think, we did well. So.
Great.
Yeah.
That's all.
questions for Bill, or Bill, anything you
Oh, Bill's
need
too.
or want to?
Yeah, there's two
Bill's
things.
too?
Right, who's next?
There's two exciting areas I want to
Exciting is good.
share with you. Yes, exciting is very good.
Sometimes.
So as you know, we joined with Farrar Law Firm to join the litigation against Jewel, the vape lawsuit. We just got notification from Farrar that they have won that suit, and there's going to be a substantial settlement coming forward to the districts. They don't know what that's going to be. We should know next month, but stay tuned. So that's a really good thing. Yeah.
Nice work
Thank
on
you
their
for
part.
doing.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then, Travis, can you pass those down?
What are the plans to do?
I don't know, and there may be requirements.
I was just gonna
of
say,
how,
I'm gonna go with education.
Education.
yeah,
yeah.
and how we can spend that money.
Right.
Pizza board.
Yep, and there's a ton of districts that are involved in this, so I don't know what significant may be the big pot.
Right,
What that trickles
divided
down
by-
to the district, I
After the
don't know,
lawyers
but,
get their cut, what do we get?
Regardless.
yeah, you know, I think,
Still good.
Well, and point made, right?
Exactly.
At the end of the day, the
From,
point was made.
exactly, yep. This is really exciting. So we've been working with my colleagues at Morrisville, Madison, Stockbridge, and myself. We've been meeting with MACNY, which is the Manufacturing Associates of New York, Central New York, and then the PEB, which is the Partners for Education and Business, is an arm of MACNY, to provide our students with work-based learning opportunities. So they have a program that they were going to come into the 4 component districts and provide work-based learning, scope and sequence opportunities, and then place students in various manufacturing on-site visits, apprenticeships, internships. It's an opportunity to get kids out in exposure in the manufacturing fields. They have a scope and sequence, and for us it works beautifully because we already have a work-based learning class with Mrs. Bosworth. So those kids will then have access to MACNY and their networking, and once a month our kids will go to an on-site visit, and then MACNY will come in and work with our students on soft skills of interviewing, writing resumes, making themselves attractive to work-based learning opportunities. So it's an exciting program. I'm happy that the 4 neighboring districts are all going to join in this. So our kids will go with kids from Madison, Morrisville, and Stockbridge for these on-site visits. So I think it's a great thing, and it's going to lead to a lot of exposure and opportunities for our kids in real-life experiences. So I'm excited to be able to offer that.
Is there a financial piece to it?
There is, and it's substantial, but when we have the 4 partnerships, it becomes less of a cost barrier and it's attainable.
Yeah, okay, that answers that question.
So we're going to drive it through BOCES, and that's
Right,
the reason.
BOCES aid.
Yeah.
Well, and so how does this link with, work with, or conflict with BOCES? Students that are going to BOCES?
It won't. It's going to
Okay.
be opposite, so kids.
So students can do both?
Kids can do both, absolutely, yeah. It's not going to hinder any opportunities or
Okay.
any programming at BOCES.
And will this open it up for kids who might not be going to BOCES and they
Mhm.
can do this in a
Yeah.
their normal schedule?
Yep, yep. So we're looking at right now, this is kind of a pilot. It's going to start in January and go to spring.
Go on.
It's a pilot on how to place kids and get kids involved. But right now, it's going to be our work-based learning, and then our kids who are interested in the work-based learning program for next year. That'll allow them to get some exposure, and then we're going to see how it works as far as scheduling and opportunities and open it up to the network. Right now, there's 32 slots available for the 4 components.
So the 4, so it's 32 divided by 4,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
And is there any intent to weight them based on district size or anything like that, or is it just 32?
We'll work
divided by
together.
4?
You know, if we can only have 6 kids go, then the other districts will pick up those 2 slots that we can.
Right.
So we're going to work together.
And
Yeah.
I'm seeing the interest potentially exceed the capacity.
Oh,
is
yeah.
what I'm more worried about.
Yep.
We have to be thoughtful.
And they're working, this is already embedded in a lot of schools in the Syracuse area. They want to move into Madison County to provide these opportunities, and their goal is to start trickling down to the middle school. You know, and I've talked with Mark a little bit on how we could do that, and the natural would be through our exploratory, those 10-week blocks, to expose our kids through that. So it's a great opportunity for us. Yeah. Yeah.
And the surface is great.
That is exciting.
Steering team update?
I don't think we've had an elementary steering team meeting since the last time, have we?
Yep, next week.
That's what I thought. And I'm not gonna be here.
Great. So, same with Emma Foundation. So everybody's meeting next week.
There you go.
That's some good news in January. So thank you for that. Knowledge sharing, anybody have anything specific there? And advocacy?
I just have a lot of dates. So Oneida Madison BOCES is doing a fiscal and legislative advocacy workshop Monday the 19th. It's at the Middle Settlement Road. So that is something I plan to attend. I'd love to have anybody join me. They're going to have a representative that actually talks to us more on the political end of it and kind of what to advocate for, political landscape for like the school aid budget, potential restrictions, and like effective advocacy initiatives and things like that. So that should be good. And then NISBA is looking to start doing these in-person events again. So December 14th is a legislative session preview webinar. So that's basically where their governmental relations team will answer questions, anything that you have about like the budget proposals, their requests, any advocacy from their end. The Universal School Meals Lobby Day is January 10th in Albany. January 29th to the 31st, they're doing an institute in Washington, D.C. February 10th is the Virtual Capital Conference. That is still virtual for right now. And then February 15th is the NISBA Lobby Day in Albany. There are also a couple, you can go online to their website, take action on that school meals. I think a lot of us have done that. And then Bill, I wanted to ask, the coalition is collecting stories from districts who have lost their free meals for all students. And they're looking for like a story for us to share our district story.
Okay.
So I think that that's something we should do to be a part of that.
Okay.
And that's it.
Brings us to community participation.
Vice Jones.
I actually do have a question.
Yes.
Nicely done.
So with the settlement with Jewel, right?
Yeah.
I'm all for, you know, for that.
Yeah.
But I'm curious why we would get, why the school district would receive money from that. Like, what hurt us from that? Like, why would we receive money from this lawsuit against Jewel?
So as you know, we have students who vape,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And we would like to do vape education programs. So there's an incentive to reap some of the money from that settlement to increase programming so we can limit the amount of students who are vaping.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
But there was some premise of the original charge. In other words, the original case against Jewel, because of the impacts it was having on schools, because of the time it was costing schools, the disruption it was costing schools, the impact it was having. I think that's what you were asking. Like, why would a school get the actual case that was taken against Jewel was from schools because of the impacts it was having on schools.
And Jewel, with their advertising, targeted youth.
Targeted.
Gotcha. So that's how you were able to make a case,
Exactly.
really.
And they're the largest
Yeah.
manufacturer.
Yeah.
And it was a class action case that we were asked to join. It wasn't that we
Yeah, well, yeah.
led the charge on
No,
this
no.
and went out.
They asked if we wanted it,
To be
and
fair.
we did, and we
Yeah,
provide
yeah.
a lot of data and supporting documentation to them through our law firm, so.
It's a really good
Cool.
question.
That was
Yeah.
a
Great
good
question.
Best community participation this school year.
Yeah.
Good work.
We
Thank
don't
you.
usually have that.
Outside of the big meetings where we had long
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
This is
Excellent.
good work.
Well done.
Thank you.
For a discussion of
Yes.
that specific topic. There's no other community participation, so at this time I'd like to turn it over to the nightlight. The nightlight tonight is to honor Debbie, and that is why Debbie is here through the whole meeting.
I'm here because Matt wasn't here.
And Matt's not here to keep you
And
away.
you know why Matt's not here, so you could be here.
I thought I was gonna come through the door right now.
So, if,
I know Matt's supposed to come further in now.
well, give us a second, there'll be something
I was
charging through
gonna
the
say,
door.
Matt's
Thanks for
in
a minute.
Vegas.
So if Bill would please present the nightlight.
So this is for you, Debbie. This is very bittersweet. We're sad, but we're excited for you. So this says, Debbie Curley, thank you for your dedication, leadership, and service over the last 28 years. Your commitment will be missed and your friendship always cherished. Best wishes for a long and happy retirement, Hamilton Central School 2022. So we present this to you and we thank you for everything. We will miss you, but we will see you.
You will? Very little. A lot less.
And that's a thank you token from the board. We hope that you enjoy a nice dinner.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
And your retirement.
Yes, thank you. Is that when you put
Can-
that light at the end?
I'm gonna clap on myself.
And there's cake.
Like,
So
You
at
want to get a
this,
picture?
yeah, so at this time, before we move to cake and a picture, at this time, I think we can adjourn the meeting and we'll move to executive session with a break in between, and that's also why we did the nightlight at the end of the meeting.
I know, because it's always 5 points on there.
Right. So we did this so that the community didn't have to stay online and watch us eat cake. So there will be no vote at the end of executive session, so nobody will miss anything and we will not go back online. I do need a motion to move to recess.
Well, we're adjourning the regular meeting.
No.
You just adjourn it.
Oh, we
and
adjourn
then-
it.
Yeah.
Just
And then go into
you can
executive
state
session.
that we're in at ease, is all you have to do.
I need a,
Are you doing executive session?
yeah, I need
Yeah.
a motion to
Yeah.
adjourn to executive session,
Right.
where we will discuss the employment history of a particular individual. So a motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And we'll call for recess. Thank you. And stay.
Can we get a picture?
Yes.
Piece of cake.
With the-
Yes.
with the-
We'll
I
have
never
board.
with my trip.